Take your best shot, boy!
Who among us can honestly say they haven't wanted to impale a guy on a rusty spike, ass first, or lop off some heads, some arms, and torsos with a chainsaw? And, of course, how about shish kebabbing a group of ninjas with a big old spear? Now, though, you can finally live out those disturbed fantasies because Sega and Platinum Games have released Madworld for Wii. This is a one-of-a-kind, ridiculously violent, very funny, and stunning beat-em-up made specifically for Nintendo's console. I'm assuming you've noticed, Madworld runs in black and white. The only color you're going to see in this game is red, and there are buckets of it as you go through environments brutalizing and massacring enemies. When you strip away everything else, Madworld's core is a beat-em-up, so it's going to be just like Final Fight, or Double Dragon, or any of those games you grew up playing. And beautiful presentation or not, if you just went around punching and kicking everybody over and over again, well, obviously it would get pretty old pretty fast. Thankfully, a number of factors come together to prevent that from happening in Madworld. First of all, there's a compelling concept. Terrorists have invaded and taken over Varigan City and changed the entire location into a giant game show called Death Watch, where the only thing you have to do is survive, namely by killing everyone around you. Why would anybody do this? Well, because they've all been poisoned and they're only going to get the antidote if they fight. Now, the storyline itself is surprisingly deep. It's penned by Yatsumi Masuno of Final Fantasy fame, and there's all sorts of arcs and threads and subtleties that fans can appreciate. You are Jack, a burly mystery man who kicks a whole lot of ass and immediately gains a sponsor into the games. Madworld works kinda like this. Jack wanders through the city and fights enemy after enemy, disposing of them in extremely violent manners. Then he might encounter a minigame of sorts. Afterward, a story snippet might play, and finally, he might face off against a ridiculously awesome boss. Platinum Games has created a very simple but effective control scheme that throws pointer out the window and instead relies on gestures for all the kills in the game. Jack himself is controlled tightly with the nunchuck's analog stick, A button punches, and B brings up his deadly chainsaw. Chainsaw in hand, you can slice enemies vertically or horizontally, depending on your preference. The controls feel good, but one thing I really like are the finishers in the game, not only because they're extremely violent and bloody, which they are, they're also cinematic, but because they're also very rewarding to perform. When you trigger a finisher, you'll be prompted to make an on-screen gesture, and when you do that, the results are so nasty and so over the top, you won't know whether to wince or laugh at some of this stuff. All these great stylized visuals are complemented by an equally stylized soundtrack. The game is backed by 20 awesome hip-hop artists, and I wasn't sure it was going to work in the end, but it totally does. It's actually quite brilliant, and it really fits the mood of the game. Meanwhile, celebrity voice actors Greg Proops and John DiMaggio play the commentators in the game, who are lewd, crude, and funny.
Oh, that's too bad. What, you're rooting against Jack now? No, it's too bad that when I let that ninja borrow my bike, I didn't know he was gonna trash it.
The only problem is that sometimes all this stuff bleeds over each other, so you've got commentary, you've got rap with vocals and sound effects all going at once. A bigger concern, though, and actually the biggest gripe I have with the entire game, is the camera system, which is occasionally wonky. This is primarily true because it's manually controlled, but you can't actually rotate it. You can only center it behind your character with a tap of a button. Thankfully, there is a lock-on system. However, that lock-on system is not perfect. You actually have to hold the button for a second to get a character lock, as opposed to just tapping it, which would have been quicker. The configuration is not perfect, but you will learn to forgive it, especially as you encounter new minigames and fun, epic boss fights. Both of which, I might add, really mix up the gameplay formula. On normal mode, Madworld's going to take most gamers about 5 to 6 hours to complete, but you do unlock weapons like this double chainsaw after you complete the game. And let it be known, there is a big, big difference between playing Madworld on normal and difficult modes. In the latter, you've only got one life to spare, enemy AI is much improved, these guys will actually dodge you, and not only that, each hit's going to take you down considerably. Get hit a few times and you're dead. Extending replay value just a little bit farther is a 2-player mode where you can compete with a friend in various mini-games from the main mode. I wish instead there was a cooperative online mode, or in fact any online functionality including leaderboards, but this is still a welcomed addition that fans might just like. All things considered, Madworld is one of the most stylish, gory, and funny games I've played, and one of the great beat-em-ups of our time. For our full written review, check out IGN.com.